DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And we are back. We are back with some more appetizers, and we're talking about the post-fight reactions of UFC 317 Topuria versus Oliveira, and that's Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. And okay, so my eyes are bulging out, my mouth is dropped wide open, and that was during and after UFC 317. Some of the fights before the main event and leading up to it, and all of this doesn't amount and account to me basically getting every prediction and pick on this card wrong. That's not what it was led to, and I'm perfectly fine when I get moments like this throughout UFC 317 or a fight night that just leave you of a gasp, eyes bulged out, mouth wide open. So let's get in a little bit of what the build up to all that was in the preliminary card, and then we'll get into the main card of how it was just capped off, like a UFC 317 was capped off as a great pay-per-view, not necessarily due to all the superstars and hype of the fights leading up to them, because they were good, but I don't think they were as amazing as they were kind of being billed to be. But the outcomes of them is what left people astonished and gasping for understanding of what they just witnessed. But let's just get into the prelims, and then we'll get into the main card. So on the early prelims, you only had like two fights on this card. And really the only fight, I guess I highlighted both of the two early prelims, because you had a heavyweight bout between Jonathan Dins and versus Alvin Haynes. So, I love heavyweight fights, always looking to see some beef, some dancing bears in there, wanting to see if someone possibly might get their head taken off or just dominated with a ridiculous shot and the power that you get from heavyweights. But we didn't really get that. That fight ended up just going to unanimous decision. And then on the main event of the early prelims, you just had a welterweight bout between Nico Price, kind of a notable name or a familiar name, versus Jacoby Smith, and he ended up getting Nico Price ended up getting rear naked choked at the 4:03 mark of the second round. So that's not really what got me going on this card. This give like an injection of adrenaline for this card, which I was hoping to see that with the heavyweight bout. But don't worry about not getting to see anybody get their head knocked off in this card, because you definitely got it, and you got that towards the main event of the prelims, standard prelims. But even leading up to that, you had the co-main event of the prelims. You had a featherweight bout between Jose Miguel Delgado versus Hader Emil, and that was a 26-second knockout with a knee and an elbow and just a KO, not a TKO. So that was wild. But then this is what really got us going for UFC 317, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira, and it was what you were hearing about throughout the night. Even during the pay-per-view, you were hearing about what had happened in the main event of the prelims, and that was the middleweight bout between Gregory Rodriguez versus Jack Hermason, and that's a Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez now. And so that fight was pretty even throughout the first 4 minutes or so. And it looked kind of like Jack Cormason was kind of picking Gregory Rodriguez apart a little bit, and just he was getting him, eating him with that jab, and it was basically just kind of a kickboxing bout. But Jack Cormason hadn't really landed anything too significant, and same with Gregory Rodriguez. But Gregory Rodriguez, just for I guess all the scar tissue and from recent fights and stuff, just the little bit of picking at him that Jack Hermason had done leading up to the finish of this fight. He had like his face was all like busted open in like 2 or 3 places, and he had like blood all on his face. And then just out of nowhere, a hook, just a straight like hook across. It was, I guess he came across with the one hook. Yeah, his was the single one. This is similar to what happened to Charles Oliveira in the main event, which we'll get to. But yeah, it was just like a hook shot, and Jack Hermason just like went limp, fell backwards, and really it was just because he was out already that he fell backwards so hard, and he had the whiplash of his head hitting on the canvas. So you got that one punch KO, and then it was followed up with a couple hammer fists because Herb Dean was a little bit slow getting in there, stopping the bout. So you could say it was a little bit of a late stoppage. A lot of people screaming that it was definitely a late stoppage, but Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez isn't going to get pulled off until the refs say so. And man, you've seen a lot of people after this fight ended at the 4:21 mark of the first round. A lot of people trying to say like Gregory Rodriguez is dirty. That's the dirtiest thing they've ever seen in mixed martial arts. Like he should be suspended and stuff. Man, some of these people, they obviously are new age mixed martial arts fans, or they're casuals, because they've obviously never watched like the kind of stuff that you see like used to see like in Pride from Wanderlei Silva laying on like late shots on people that were on the ground, or Mirko Krokop and Shogun Hua like stomping and soccer kicking people, or even more recently and just retired, just retired a couple of years back. So not even that long ago. I guess some of those bouts where he did what I'm talking about were maybe 10 plus years ago. But Dan Henderson literally had a nickname for what he would do after one shot KOs on guys. He would do the H bomb, like where if a guy was already like sprawled out on the ground, he would come over the top and like try to like land an elbow like on their chin or around their neck area. Like he like talk about, a lot of people were talking about how they thought Jack Hermason like he was dead or he looked dead. Just go back and watch the Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping fight, because Michael Bisping looked dead after that H bomb that Dan Henderson landed on him at the end of that fight. Left him stiff as well. But anyways, I digress from just the ridiculous and soft fans that we have in the current, not just UFC or in just the world in general. But it's not Gregory Rodriguez's job to stop dishing out damage and danger until the ref stops. That's what the ref is in there for. That's what the judges are in there for. Like he is just in there on a mission, and that's the either make Jack Hermason quit or be the one that makes him quit. So it was brutal. You have to sometimes, for some of those people that are insulted or disturbed by certain things, like in mixed martial arts, they have to shade their eyes or hide their eyes, and if stuff like that bothers you that much, just don't watch. You probably shouldn't be watching mixed martial arts as one of your sports for choices of choice. But anyway, so that's the preliminary card. Like it lived up to itself. Like talk about a great way to possibly end like a fight night. If a fight night ended like that, man, you'd have so much juice just towards the end of the night. But man, after all that happened in the preliminaries, you still had 5 main card fights. But anyways, let's get into those. So we spent enough time on the prelims here. So let's get into the main card. So can I get a menu? And so this is a UFC 317. You had this was June 28, 2025, held at the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada, United States. They had attendance of 19,800 and a total gate of 11.3 million. So it did pretty good on in that regards. The main card did, and just the whole ticket sales and things of that nature. But the main card, so the on to the main card. It's a UFC Ilia Topuria versus Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. This is UFC 317. And so the first fight on the card, we had a bantamweight bout between Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. And that fight ended up going to a decision, unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. And that was just a 3 5-minute round fight. And I originally, like I said, I wasn't over exuding or self-deprecating myself too much when I said like I got every pick wrong on this card. Just within regards to the pick of the fighter to win, it's wrong, just close enough with all the methods as well. So going into this card, I felt as if it was kind of like almost like kind of like the complete opposite of UFC 316, where the fights were almost like a given of who was going to win and how it was going to happen. But this card felt a little bit more like a coin flip, and I ended up on the wrong end of the coin flip on every single one of these fights on the main card. But we're still going into it regardless. But so this fight between Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Going into this fight, it felt like it was supposed to be kind of like your classic grappler versus striker. You thought Peyton Talbot was going to be the better striker, had better kickboxing and Muay Thai versus Felipe Lima, who is the better grappler, had better wrestling. And it ended up just being kind of like a complete flip of what you expected in this bout because it ended up being Peyton Talbot, who ended up controlling the fight pretty much anywhere it went. And it was Felipe Lima who, like early on in rounds, would seem like he was landing some shots. And if he was keeping his distance, he was able to make something work in the striking game. But then it would seem like if anything would go wrong, or if or a punch would land on him, he would go for a clinch or would go for like a half-hearted takedown. And Peyton Talbot would just reverse it on him and then end up on top and just keep holding down for the entire round. So was not expecting that at all. Was more expecting it to maybe be, like I said, like the complete opposite. But Peyton Talbot just showed that he was better than Felipe Lima pretty much anywhere the fight went as a true mixed martial artist. And pretty much every single round, Felipe Lima looked good. I guess looked good enough to win one of those rounds. Seeing how it was, all the judges had it 29-28, but still, Peyton Talbot was impressive in a fight where I think a lot of people were starting to back me a little bit that they liked Felipe Lima's four fight winning streak opposed to Peyton Talbot's 1 fight losing streak. And well, it turns out we were wrong after all. All right, so now then on to the second fight on the card. We have a lightweight bout between Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. And this fight ended up going decision as well. It went unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28, and that's just 3 5-minute rounds. And I originally predicted Renato Moicano to win this fight. And even though Beneil Dariush has never been submitted before, I was thinking, well, maybe Beneil Dariush hasn't fought in like 2.5 years because he's had some suspect issues with his chin because he'd been knocked out 2 times in a row. And I was just going off of, it's about time someone submits him. And both of these guys is kind of grappler versus grappler because you want to see who's better. And maybe Renato Moicano can get Beneil Dariush on his toes and on his heels after getting maybe rocked, and then maybe get a hold of his neck or get a hold of his arm and get the submission. But that's not how it happened. That's not how it went at all. It ended up kind of being like Benel Dariush uh, was how Peyton Talbot was to Felipe Lima. Is kind of what Benel Dariush looked like through the first part of the first round, and then through the second and third round. Pretty much just dominated Renato Moicano wherever the fight went. But the biggest moment of the fight was when Renato Moicano just landed like a straight, what is it, like a straight right punch to Benel Dariush, like right on like the face, the chin area, and it set him down like onto his butt, and then Renato Moicano just kind of went kind of wild, trying to get the win with a ground and pound. And uh, you'd think after that moment, like the biggest moment of the fight, that wasn't big enough to finish it because it went to decision. But the biggest moment of the fight, you'd think that Benel Dariush after the first round would be the one that would be looking a little different or look like he's kind of hurt or injured. But really, it was Renato Moicano that I guess he just emptied his gas tank trying to finish Benel Dariush at the end of that round. So, and then Benel Dariush just took advantage of having better cardio, and just Renato Moicano just uh, blew his wad trying to finish Benel Dariush at the end of the first with that good straight shot, and it looked like uh, Dariush was on track to have his third knockout loss in a row, and it was kind of going how I was hoping it would. I was hoping he'd maybe get rocked and then Renato Moicano do something with it, but he didn't, and that was impressive. Benel Dariush coming back from that and recovering between rounds, the first and the second round, that was really impressive. And then he came out and just dominated the rest of the fight. Wherever it went, he looked better striking, and then most of those fights, most of the second and the third round, it was just Benel Dariush taking Moicano down and him basically just kind of laying flat on his back throughout the whole fight. All right, now then on to the third fight on this card, and this was a banger. This was a banger, and very disappointing that this should have been a 5 round fight. And honestly, I don't really know why it wasn't. They need to implement that. Like obviously, if it's a title fight or it's the main event, it needs to be a 5 round fight. Well, also if it's a title eliminator fight, like the fight that um, decides who the next title opponent challenger is going to be, then that should be a 5 round fight because it was really a disgrace that this fight only ended up going 3 rounds. Like it felt like at the end of the third round, like it felt like a championship fight, and it felt like it was really just kind of getting going. But this fight, it was just basically just a straight up, just a brawl, a straight up war, and just a kickboxing match. I don't think there was hardly any takedowns or anyone ended up on the ground in this fight. But how it started in the first round, it was kind of just Brandon Royval just kind of sticking his jab out there, kind of just sticking his jab out there, and he wasn't really landing anything hard or significant, but he was throwing like twice as much as Joshua Van. But then Joshua Van would every once in a while in that first round he would counter what Brandon Royval was doing, and when he would land, it looked like it had a lot more behind it. It looked like it was had a lot more significant, and it looked like he was trying to actually cause some damage with that shot. But Brandon Royval, like I said, he's just trying. Looked like he was trying to just kind of point strike early on, but man, that just got kind of thrown out the window in the second round, and I swear they just started just swinging, just swinging wild throughout the rest of the fight, the second and the third round, and so I picked Brandon Royval, who was the number one ranked flyweight, and Joshua Van was coming in this like ranked like what, like 11th or something, or 12th, coming in here against uh, Brandon Royval. Like Brandon Royval took a big risk there, and Joshua Van, having only fought like 3 weeks ago, took advantage of a great opportunity. So now that he's the title contender, but I thought Brandon Royval was going to do exactly what he did in the first round and just kind of point strike and just win the fight by decision. But that's not how it went. It went the other way. It went with Joshua Vine winning that fight that way. by decision unanimous. It was 29-28, 29-28, and then 30-27 by one of those judges. I found that a little bit hard to believe that that Joshua Van won every single one of those rounds. If I was going to give Brandon Royval one of the rounds, it would have been the first round before he started opening it up a little bit and just kind of threw caution to the wind. And it was an exciting fight, easily the fight of the night for this, and maybe easily the fight of the year for this, and a good highlighter and a good asterisk by it, saying that it needs to be a 5-round fight and that rule needs to be changed. That's definitely a good example of why that needs to be changed. But that was just a 3 5-minute round fight, but very exciting, and it was just such an awesome thing to have such a crazy fight like that. And still, you have the in the main event. You still have 2 title fights left on the card. But anyway, so we're gonna go on to the co-main event now. You have a flyweight championship bout between Alexander Pantoja, the champion, versus Kai Kara-France, the challenger. And this fight it ended up going kind of how I expected, if it didn't go how I was hoping it would go in the first round. And I picked Kai Kara-France to win this, and I expected him to get a knockout, or was hoping he would get the knockout. And if it didn't happen, I knew if he didn't get that knockout in the first round or early in the second, then it probably wasn't going to happen. So they're rolling over into the third round. I knew that Kai Kara-France wasn't going to win, and it didn't look like he was better in the striking game or on the ground, because Alexander Pantoja pretty much dominated him no matter where it went. And Kai Kara-France just looked kind of off within his striking game. Like when he would try to like throw a punch to Alex Pantoja, he'd like literally like go like all the way like to the ground and like be throwing like a punch like upward, like while his like head is like almost on the ground. It was very weird looking technique and style that you saw from Kai Kara-France. But Alexander Pantoja in the first round just basically showed that he could strike with Kai Kara-France, and then in like the second and the third round he started taking him down, and was able to slip in. Finally, in the third round, was able to he was riding Kai Kara-France back quite a bit earlier in the fight. He had him in a triangle, a body triangle. I think that was like towards like the end of the first round. Had him in a body triangle, and then Alexander Pantoja was able to get Kai Kara-France in that same body triangle again in the third round, around the 155 mark of the third round, and just like within a flash, he had gotten the rear naked choke submission in, because the first time he got it in, Kai Kara-France did a really good job like defending it and like switching the tension and the pressure on the locked ankle part of the body triangle. But I don't know, it's just like he got caught in that body triangle again, and then I don't know, it just seemed like he kind of forgot to defend and fight the hands, and he got in that rear naked choke, and it was pretty tight. I think it was so tight that he went to sleep like right as he was like tapping out. So he was like limp and kind of got thrown off of Alexander Pantoja at the end of that fight, and just laid like face down for a little bit. But it may have just been because he was upset, and then the ref kind of touched him and he got up. But yeah, so that's how Kai Kara-France lost this. I was hoping for a KO, but he ended up getting Alexander Pantoja retaining the belt and defeating Kai Kara-France with submission, rear naked choke at the 155 mark of the third round. And we just talked about the flyweight title eliminator bout with Joshua Van winning that and becoming now the #1 contender. It was kind of funny because he came into the ring. He stuck around and stayed in the front row, and he came in the ring at the end of Alexander Pantoja's title defense, and they were pretty respectful of each other, and then had kind of a serious looking face off at the end, and just kind of both talked about like, oh, you can't beat me because I can do this, and oh, you can't beat me because just watch what I just did to him, kind of stuff. But they were pretty respectful of each other. But we got that again after the end of the main event as well. But yeah, Alexander Pantoja definitely supplanting himself as one of the best flyweights in UFC history now with his fourth title defense. So that is pretty impressive once you start getting up there in that 4 or 5, 6 title defense, and just hell, just once you get like six straight wins in the UFC and on, it definitely gets pretty impressive. But so as you can see, we're going 0-4 on this card. But like I said, I'm not upset with it because you got to see some wild finishes before we even got to the main event with RoboCop devastating knockout. And like I said, throughout the main card, we heard that he was cleared by doctors, and then heard again that he what? No, I think it was he was responsive and passed all the checks that he needed to be cleared by doctors, and then that he went home and went to the UFC's fighter hotel or whatever. So he had ended up being fine. But anyways, so now then on to the main event of UFC 317, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira, and this was for the vacant lightweight championship bout because it was left Islam Makhachev, I think, left the belt relinquished it, I think, is what I think happened here. Making sure I got the right name right, who that was. Yeah, is Islam Makhachev. So that's who made it vacant, so he could move up to welterweight, so 170, just like Ilia Topuria was doing with moving up from featherweight to lightweight. So very similar, and so not the outcome I was expecting at all. So coming into this fight with my prediction I was making, I was predicting like, I need to see Ilia Topuria fight at lightweight. I need to see like what he looks like. How strong is he? Does he look like small coming up to lightweight? And I mean, with Charles Oliveira's 3-inch height advantage and just as big in size, I would say Charles Oliveira was bigger than any featherweight that Charles Oliveira was bigger than any featherweight that Ilia Topuria had ever fought. But Ilia Topuria, he looked thicker. He looked thicker, and even though he was shorter than Charles Oliveira by 3 inches, he still looked stocky, and he didn't look like a small lightweight. And he definitely showed that he wasn't a small lightweight, and still possessed vicious power for a 155 pounder, a 145 pounder coming up to 155. And so in this fight, so we got to see it, and Charles Oliveira got just like one opportunity to show any of like his ground game at all. He like got into kind of a scramble with Ilia Topuria early in the fight, to where he went down to like the ground and tried to go for like a leg lock, and looked like there was 1 or 2 moments where he had it, where it looked like he had it, and maybe there was something there, but Ilia Topuria was just able to keep spinning and rolling with it until he ended up on top, and he just like stood up and got out of Charles Oliveira's guard, like he didn't want to be on the ground anymore with him. And so it continued to just be kind of a striking bout, and it looked like Charles Oliveira was landing a little bit here and there. And I honestly thought, just with the display on the ground, where it looked like he was tried for like some submission attempts, and the striking looked pretty even and competitive both ways. And just then out of nowhere, Charles Oliveira just ran like right into like a hook by Ilia Topuria, like just so clean. And then he's like already out and like going back, and Ilia Topuria lands another one, and then he just lands like a couple like half-hearted, like two or three half-hearted hammer fist before he gets kind of like pushed away, and just like my eyes and my mouth were just like Ilia Topuria. He did it again. He did it again. He just knocked out and just straight up clowned a UFC legend 3 times in a row. He did it to Alexander Volkanovski. He did it to he did it to Max Holloway, and now he's done it to Charles Oliveira. And these are all three of those guys are guys that have never like they've been like maybe TKO'd and like knocked out of a fight, but they've never just completely just had their lights shut out. And Ilia Topuria doing it 3 times in a row now with him as the lightweight championship champ, double champ. Like I'd be very cautious if I was any type of gambler to pick pick any fighter over him in a lightweight bout. And heck, let's see if he knocks off like 1 or 2 more lightweights, and heck, maybe he'll go up to welterweight 170, become a thrace champ, a triple champ. But anyways, so that's UFC 317, Topuria versus Oliveira. Like I said, just obviously wasn't overly excited or happy about how any of my picks went, but I was definitely, as a UFC fan and just a fan of MMA, how the results of some of these fights and how the method and how some of these fights ended was so crazy and so wild, and the violence and the viciousness that you're wanting to see. Like the whole point of you watching MMA, you got a heaping dose of it at UFC 317. Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. So now that's UFC 317. Now we're looking into a couple fight nights. You actually getting Derek Lewis versus Taliesin Teixeira on a fight night, which is be like 2 weeks from now. And got also Stephen Thompson's fighting on that card. Calvin Cantor, Nate Landwehr, Victor Petrino, Austin Lane, Junior Tafa. So there's some nice fights, some beef on that card, on the main card of that fight. You have a heavyweight bout for the main event, and then you have a light heavyweight bout to start the main card, and then another heavyweight. The second fight on the main card is a heavyweight bout, but then you have to wait until just again another time where you're only having to wait like 3 weeks or so before the next fight. It was July 19th. So July 19th, only having to wait three more weeks. So that's UFC 318, July 19th, 2025, and this is Holloway versus Poirier 3. So Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 3. And even though that's like God, man, so that's for the BMF title, but after that, man, that is kind of a terrible card. Like the only other notable name like on the main card is Paulo Costa, and knowing him with his, I guess Michael Johnson as well, but that doesn't really, as a pay-per-view fight, a main card fight, that doesn't really move the needle for me. And what I was going to say about Paulo Costa, with the way he gets injured and pulls out of fights, I'd be surprised if he's still even on this card, 318. So hey, you better be appreciative of how crazy and how good the last 2 pay-per-views have been, UFC 316 and UFC 317, some of the most violent moments this year that you'll probably get to see. So be appreciative, because I'm not so sure how they may need to add some names or move some fighters around in the main card to make that actually worth watching and definitely worth buying. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?